it's Denise from Motley Fabric, and today we're making American flag lined zipper pouches. What you're going to learn is how to do a zipper and how to make a lined pouch. A very simple one. And then this pattern here is going to be linked in the description, so you can print that out and follow along. And I'm just using a bunch of scraps today. This is just some different reds and blues that I had in my stash. So it's very scrap friendly. If you have some more patriotic prints that you want to use, like I had this one before, something like this, whatever you want to do. Or you could do it with solids, and there's a bunch of different options for it. So let's get started. So let's take a look at everything that we need for the flag wristlet. First off, I happen to have this zipper. I got most of this from my stash, so it's very scrap happy if you have a lot of red and blue and white in there. But I had this long zipper. I think this is going to be just perfect. The pattern that you'll find in the description calls for up to a 9-inch, so, and it also has instructions if you need to add tabs on the end. So here's my sample one, and you can see I needed the tabs because my zipper wasn't quite long enough. So the instruction sheet shows you how to do this part. Okay. I have this blue with a lighter blue dot. That's going to be the lining and the strap. The back is this red over here. And then for my stripes, you can see, as I was just using from my stash, I had to sew a little bit together to make sure this stripe would be long enough. I did the same over here for the field of stars. And I had this really cool one that kind of has some stars in it. But like I said, get scrap happy. If I had a bunch of different reds all in one stripe, that's perfect. If you had a bunch of different blues all patched together to make this field, you could do that too. Additionally, if you want to add stars, maybe you have a solid blue, you can do some French knots would be good. Little buttons would be great. If you have maybe you're doing it white and you put in some blue stars with some fabric marker or something like that. So get as creative as you want. You could applique stars on there, however you want to do it. I'm just going to leave mine like this. And then for the inside, I use this fusible fleece. I have 2 pieces, and again, the downloadable pattern will show you everything that you need. I'm going with white, especially because my white stripes are a little bit see-through. So once they're on there, I think that'll be perfect. So my first step, what I'm going to go do is alternate the short stripes, red, white, red, white. I'm going to be using gray thread. I could use white, but it would really be a big contrast against the red if it ever was seen as I'm putting it together. So I'm going to do gray, and then when I fold it, or not fold, iron, I'm going to iron toward the red so that we don't get a little bit of a shadow. I tried to do it with my hands, forget it. I'll iron it, you'll see how it looks. So I'm going to go do that and then come back and show you what that piece looks like with all these little red and white stripes. I'm back from the sewing machine, and here you can see my short stripes. And you may notice right away the edges are not perfectly straight, and that's fine. This pattern calls for a 1/2-inch seam allowance, and that is so we can trim this up and make it great as we continue along in the process of assembling the wristlet. So these pieces were 6.5 inches, and if I line it up with this bottom one that's 6.5, you can see I cut this white stripe a little short, but it's not going to hit that 1/2 inch line, so I'm not too concerned about it. Some went over, and I trimmed that as much as I could. And here you can see, again, it doesn't line up perfectly to the ruler, but I'm not concerned about that. That's what our seam allowance is for. All right, so also as I went along, I trimmed my seam allowance back here so I could iron them nice and flat. And you can see they're ironed toward the red. That way we don't have shadows here in this white part. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to align this to the ruler. Which way's the top? I guess I had this way to be in the bottom. I guess it doesn't really matter, but here we go. So we're lined up like this. I'm going to take the field of blue right here, and we're going to do right sides together, and I'm going to line it up with this bottom part. That was the most straight squared up piece, so that's what we're going to go by. Fold it over like this, and we're going to sew along using this blue fabric as the guide. So when you flip it, you can see a lot of blue. It's kind of uneven in certain places. That's fine. We're just going to sew right here. If you need to pin it, please feel free to pin it. But again, we're lining it up to the ruler, not to the fabric. And that's going to come in play later as well, because here we're going to, when we do some sewing later, we're going to line it up to the blue field, because that's the size that we want, and it's not perfectly aligned with the stripes. But again, it's within the seam allowance, so we're good to go. All right, so I'm going to do that. I'll come back and I will also work on the longer stripes. So we'll have two different pieces and we'll see how those go together. All right, now let's get our two pieces together here. So what I want to do is, as before, align my most straight side to the ruler, and that's this white stripe here. And so I'm going to align it right here like this. It's supposed to be 11 inches, which it is. That's great. And now I can take this piece here, flip it, and we're going to pin, if you like that kind of thing, and sew across. And then again, we're going to press it toward the dark side, and we'll have a nice flag like this. Okay. The next step, which I'll do off camera as well, is I'm taking my piece of fusible fleece, and I prefer fusible fleece because I like the kind of squish that it gives my wristlet, but you can use other kinds of interfacing if you wish. I do suggest using the interfacing, or at least some, just to kind of hold down these seam allowances, otherwise it'll feel kind of funky on the inside. So when I'm done sewing and ironing, I'll have a piece like this, and then I'll do the back as well. I'll iron my back piece onto the other, and we'll have these two. And when I come back, we'll work on doing the zipper. All right, I'm back with my whole flag, and it's been fused to the fleece, and now it's time for the zipper. If your zipper is smaller, you'll want to follow the directions to add the tabs on the sides so that it becomes 11 inches wide. Mine's a great size, so I'm just going to use it as it is. I'm going to align this piece here to the ruler, because remember, it got a little crooked here, but once we do that half-inch seam allowance, right, like kind of like this, you're not going to see it anymore. It's going to be great. So what you want to do is you take your zipper right side down, so the pole is facing away from you. But for this project, we don't want to line it up at the top perfectly, okay? If we do that and we stitch, then this top stripe is going to be thicker than these other ones. And we definitely don't want that. So how do we solve it? I'm going to be using a zipper foot. It's not necessary, but it makes things a lot easier. And I'll take you over with me to the machine so you can see how it works. But we're going to be connecting it to the shank on this side, and the needle is going to go through this square right here, okay? So when I do that, and I'm just going to flip this zipper right side up so you can see a little better, but when I sew it, it's definitely going to be right side down, okay? I'm going to lower it a little bit, right? So that when I sew like this, and my needle is going in right here, very close to the zipper, and it's done, and it turns up, now it's got a more reasonable size stripe. Okay, it's still a little bit bigger, so if I wanted, I could even shift it down a little bit more. And that's why the pinning is real important for this step. You may have noticed I don't pin a lot, but this time I definitely will, okay? So once you get this, I'm gonna pin this first. Then I'm gonna take one of my lining pieces and put it right side down. Oh, sorry, let me flip this back the way it was supposed to be. Right, so it's the outside piece is right side up. The zipper is right side down. The lining piece is right side down, and it's aligned up here with the first piece and with the ruler. And then we'll pin, pin, pin. I'll take you over to the machine, and you'll see how we're going to use the zipper foot for it. Okay? And again, it's not necessary, it just makes things a little easier. But when we do our half-inch seam allowance, I think our top stripe is going to be just what we want to see. All right, I'm all pinned and at the machine, and I just want to show you briefly here. I opened the zipper, okay? And what we're gonna do is sew along about this far and then pause and put the zipper back, because you can't sew over a zipper pull, y'all. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, so now when I put my item down here, and you can see I have a little bit of masking tape just as a visual aid for my 1/2 inch seam allowance. When I put my foot down and it's lined up, I've done it so that the raised part of the zipper, you can see here, is going under here. And then this side of the foot is lined up on the edge of the zipper. That's going to keep us nice and straight, and it's going to look awesome. So let's get going. Okay, so my needle is down. I'm lifting my foot. Now I'm going to reach inside, find that zipper. Ouch, got a pin in me. And fix it up nice and straight. All right, so after sewing, I pressed and I added some top stitching here, and that's going to keep the fabric from getting stuck in the zipper. I just went ahead and I used the gray, but I did, for a red hot second, think about doing a light blue bobbin and then dark blue to here and then doing red, but I decided gray was gonna work fine. So repeat this step with the other pieces. So you get your backing piece that's fused right side up, and you put your zipper right side down and go through the whole same process of figuring out where it needs to be pinned, and then the other lining piece. And you can see mine, I had to piece it together a little because I was using scraps, and I prefer this to be toward the bottom of the inside of the bag, so I'm just going to do it like that. And remember, the lining piece is going to align with the front piece, and we're going to line it up to the ruler so that we can make sure it gets that it's nice and straight, and we're accounting for kind of the wiggly edges, although we don't really have many here. On the sides we do, but you know, such is life. All right, so I'm going to ask you to go do that and to top stitch as well on that other side, and then we're going to have a piece that looks like this, and I'll show you what to do next. All right, so now I've got it's all connected to the zipper, all top stitched. It's looking pretty good. So my next step is going to be to square this up. So it needs to be 11 across and 14 this way. And to make sure I'm nice and square, I'm going to line up the zipper to the ruler, right? And then I'm going to go 7 inches this way and trim a little bit. 7 inches this way, trim a little bit. And I'm going to make this 11. And so we will be trimming off some of the edges. Just make sure you pull your zipper in so that you don't get caught up on the pull. All right. And then our next step, and I'll show you how to pin it, is going to be putting the outsides together and the insides together. Okay. And we will also be inserting the little wristlet part that goes around your wrist. The wristlet I didn't show earlier, but there's really a lot you can do with it. So for me, I made kind of a bias tape and I gave it these parallel stitch lines. You can see that. And this is how long I made it. Okay. It can be as long as you want it to be. Okay. It can be way longer. It can go like this if you want it to go like that. It can come across the top, all the way across the top, and be a little bit more like a traditional purse all the way around. So how did I make this? It's the same method as making bias tape. I started with a 2-inch piece. I ironed it so that I would have a little guide in the middle so you can fold in the sides. Now it's 1 inch. You fold it over one more time, it's 1/2 inch. If you want a thicker strap, start with a thicker piece of fabric, more than 2 inches. Okay. And another thing you can do is if you wanted to just do a little bit and maybe have a D-ring and another one elsewhere, right? And a chain, or you could use a ribbon, or you could take something like this and do it like that if you wanted to if you wanted to. So it's really up to you as how you want that part to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video now, and I'm going to trim this up, and then I'll show you how to pin it all together. Okay, I trimmed it up, and if you have a zipper like me where you trimmed off the end, be real careful. I don't want to lose that pull. I don't want it to come off, but we do need it to be open a little bit. And so for pinning, the first step is to get this flag all by itself. So I'm just going to flip it like this. So now the flag's by itself. And I'm going to pin on my strap. And however yours is going to go, you do that as well. So I want mine to line up with this little stripe here. And this is why I picked a 1/2-inch strap, because I think, you know, it's kind of consistent and pleasing to the eye. So I'm just going to go straight across, line up the raw edges, and pin it in. Okay. Oh, pin is bent. All right, anyway. So if you're doing one that goes over the top, it's going to be some here and some there, and or maybe some here and down there as well. All right, so that's step one. So I got that done. Now I'm going to take the backing and fold it over the front. And because I trimmed it, it should just align perfectly this way, and you can just pin it. But you do want to make sure that your zipper is right at the edge. So here's the white part of my zipper, and it's lined up. If you have tabs, then maybe you want to focus more on the top stitching and making sure that they touch each other, like they're nice and even, kind of like in the pillowcase video. All right, so like this, and the other side as well. And you're just gonna pin it all around this way, and then you're gonna pin the lining together as well. Okay. When we sew, we're going to start probably around here. So turn the corner, turn the corner, turn the corner like this. But we're going to leave a couple of inches right here so that we can turn it right side out again. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to pin this, take it over to the machine, bring it back, show you how to turn it out. So now I'm all sewed up, and I trimmed it a little bit to reduce the bulk. You can see here. And I cut the corners across and then came in close, careful not to break the stitch line, but this will give us more pointy corners. So we're gonna do that. And then here where I left it open, I did leave a little bit of fabric because that's gonna make it easier for me to sew it shut down the line. So now comes the arduous task and careful work of turning everything inside out. All right, that took a hot minute. All right, so I'll point these out a little bit more later, but now it's time to sew this part shut, right? So I'm gonna take this over to the iron, and I'm gonna fold these and iron them down like this. And you can do a ladder stitch so it'll disappear. But because it's on the inside and on the side, I'm just gonna stick it in the machine and give it maybe 1/8 of an inch, so just a little bit. Make sure I grab it all, and you'll be good. If you're doing the ladder stitch, having a little bit of extra fabric is gonna help you a little bit. But once you do that, we'll just tuck it right back into the purse, point out the corners a little bit, and then you'll be all done. We'll see how it looks. Oh, I got my zipper stuck. I'm going to fidget with that a little bit. But this is how we're looking. So I'm going to go sew that shut, and we'll be back for the end. And that's it. We're done. What a cute little purse. Great for, I don't know, I would say the 4th of July parade or the barbecue, but who knows if that's going to happen. But it's adorable. It shows your patriotic love of America. And we got this going on. And before I go, I have 2 pieces of news to share with you. One is next week, July 1st through 4th, 2020, I'm having my 2-year anniversary sale. So if you're in Colorado, I hope that you come visit me here in the shop. I'm gonna have the quilting cottons back there, $8 off the bolts. And most everything else is 25% off when you spend $25 or more. And I do consignment sales, so not everything there is included, but some of it is. So thank you to those consigners who agreed to that. And then I have a bit of a fundraising product. You know, people do t-shirts. How about Motley Fabric socks? They're 10 bucks, so if you're of a mind to support a local business, such as mine, then I would really appreciate it if you got some of these, and I can ship them as well. So again, thanks so much for sewing with me today. Drop a photo of yours in the comments. I'd love to see how yours turned out, and I'll see you next time.